Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rash's World. Today we have a very special guest, Juliet Hall. Welcome to Rash's World.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So what I'd like to start off with, how would you introduce yourself? What would you say for our audience here? What is something that, how would you define yourself here briefly? What would you say?
Yeah, so I am a leadership advisor, which means I do a lot of consulting and coaching. I'm also a speaker and I'm a new author.
Mhm. And the book is Own Your Opportunities, the story of self-discovery and self-determination. I
Yes.
love the title, by the way.
Thank
And
you.
I can't wait to talk about it here in this podcast. So, the title itself, Own Your Opportunities, taking responsibility. What can you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's a book about human responsibility, and the responsibility being that we have to be very diligent in discovering ourselves first. I believe that self discovery is the genesis of true leadership. And also, our culture in America, anyway, encourages us to live according to a certain track, which is to grow up, go to school, get a degree, get a job, pay your bills, and die, and get a family along the way. But our culture does not encourage us to self manifest, to self actualize, to self maximize. And so, own your opportunities is about understanding and recognizing the gift that is inside of you and taking the responsibility to act, to tap into that seed of greatness inside of you and manifesting that.
Which is ironic because we talk about being yourself, right? So that's something that we encourage in people. At the same time, we say, follow us and do the same thing as everyone else. So there's a conflict already.
There is. I mean, that's a great point. I tell people one of my sayings is fail at fitting in.
Mhm.
And in other words, if you really want to stand out, you have to be an original. If you really want to be recognized and be known for something, you have to be an original, and you have to recognize that your authenticity has no competition. And so yeah, there is that conflict there of you're told one thing, but you're expected to live according to a different track. And so my book is about defying what culture says you ought to do and recognizing in yourself, what it is that you were created or born to do.
Mhm. And I love thinking outside of the box and even like defining myself. I don't see myself within that box, and that's constraining. I feel like I'm actually outside of it, and I want people and encourage people to jump outside of it too, of like not limiting themselves in many ways. And that could be in any way. Their definition of themselves is often limited, and it's not even their own definition. It's often definition of others who try to define you, and don't fall for that is what I would say.
Yeah, I mean I feel like you've read my book, I mean, because I there's a line in my book that speaks to not allowing other people to define success for you. You have to define that for yourself.
Often it's like we measure success by money. So it's like if you have more money, you're more successful. Um, Again, that's debatable. But when we look at it, does it make you happy though? I mean, you have a lot of money, and we see billionaires who are unhappy. And so it's not working. It's not helping you in many ways. So how can we change that shift, that mindset of not seeing money as the main thing? And we kids too, when they grow up, parents often say, be somebody important, like a doctor or a lawyer. But what if you don't like any of those options?
Yeah, so where money is concerned, I do believe that money adds to happiness, but what you have to understand is that true happiness is internal. Like you have to be happy within yourself. Money or even power, it doesn't change a person. It only brings out what's already inside of them. And
Yeah.
so when you have more money or when you are in a huge spotlight or you have this broad platform, it's a magnifier of who you already are. So if you're not happy when you make 30,000, in America is dollars. So if you're not making 30, you know, if you're not happy when you make $30,000 a year, you're not going to be happy when you make $300,000 a year. I mean, it's so it's that's how I look at money. And I also tell people that you know, money is replaceable, but time is not.
Yes.
And you know, so that's a very important lesson. But I, you know, I was fortunate to make a lot of money in my corporate career. And I mean, I was in the top 1%, if you will, of income earners in America, according to our census data. But I will tell you, at the height of my career, I was my most miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I did use my money to refurbish, you know, renovate my house, and that made me happy. But the money alone does not make someone happy. That happiness, it's your responsibility to make decisions in your life and moves in your life that you know is going to add to or create a happy space within yourself.
Yeah, and doing what you love. I mean, that's searching for natural talents, as you're saying, because there are things that give you pleasure that resonate with you, and tapping into that. And so once you do that, the money will actually come, because even if it's something that is generally not lucrative, you will do so well that it will be, and it will be rewarding. And I think we should take that path. It's really important. And so even like when you look at things like the entertainment industry, and it's like my son loves animation. So I encourage that, because if you do it well, you're going to make a lot of money. That's actually a big business. And we noticed it during the pandemic, where it's like, this is not only big business, but it's hugely important for our well-being.
Yes, yeah. What the last corporation that I worked for had a saying that if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. And so you're absolutely right. You have to enjoy what you do. I believe that at the intersection of what you love to do and what you do well, at that intersection is your genius. You know, it's that space that you have to work towards, and you have to get to that intersection though. And I totally agree. When you are operating in with something that you love to do and it's a natural gift for you, prosperity is within that. You know, I think, you know, these are the lessons that need to be taught. Like, I wasn't taught this when I was growing up. At a certain point, somehow through or I think in my life, I think I had this pressure of being realistic. You know, you're told at some point that you need to find a career that is going to pay the bills, right? And so I mean, when we were children though, I mean, you know, I could be whatever I wanted to be as a child, but then but unfortunately our culture, and by our culture I mean by way of our parents or our teachers, or just the people that we even see that, you know, that we look up to, it's like they have this tone of okay, you got to be responsible now. And you have to do something that in their mind has substance to it. And so yeah.
Dreams are so important, and it's sad that we lose touch with that, because again of our upbringing, and we want to be realistic, because being realistic in many ways can be limiting. It's important though, we don't want to live in fantasy, of course, but finding that balance again between like, okay, well, this is the reality, but what can I do to improve it? And I like maximization. I like that term. It reminds me of Maslow's self-actualization, of not only reaching your potential, but even maybe going beyond that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because I think there's always another level, there's always another gear inside of us. And even like, I feel like I'm at a point of where I have reached that apex, according to Maslow, on, you know, self-actualizing, but I can even be better. I can, you know, write another book. I can, you know, do more speaking engagements. There's infinite possibilities uh, which can grow you even beyond getting to getting to that level that you know, where you see yourself. And so yeah, I mean, I just think that we have it within us to keep growing, you know, keep maximizing, continue to be a better version of ourselves, and we always have something to reach higher towards.
Yeah, and that would be the drive. And then once you do it and it's something you invested in, it works so much better. But I think many people feel stuck. and they feel stuck in their job or the routine or their education or lack thereof. And I think it's like it's really opening up that self-discovery, because each of us has something to offer and it's unique. And if we really tap into that, that's a gold mine. But we don't realize it. And trying to be like others, you're wasting your potential, your uniqueness that you have there. So how can we identify that? How can we get in contact with that unique part of ourselves? What would you recommend?
So, first understand that your job is not who you are. Your 9 to 5 job is not who you are. That title that you have, it's not who you are, but it's necessary to experience the job that you're on and to learn lessons, because that job can help you along the journey to becoming or to discovering and then becoming who you are. I mean, that's what happened with me. I feel like in my career, I was given a lot of experiences and exposure to do different things and to find out what it was that I hated doing and what drained me. And likewise, I had other experiences that it revealed a path of least resistance for me. I mean, it's like when I found opportunities that I enjoyed doing and I seemed to do it naturally well, and other people recognized me for it, that's when I was like, you know what, this is affirming for me. I'm learning something about myself that I absolutely love to do, and it feels like a natural extension of me. And I will tell you, at some point in my corporate, actually towards the latter part of my corporate career, I found myself in a space where I felt like my career had met my call. And it was the best place to be in. And in that moment, it made me remember that I was a writer, I was a storyteller, I was a speaker all along, and somehow I had forgotten. I had forgotten the things that I love to do, and you know, for people out there who are listening to this topic is so important because there are so many people who have forgotten their gift, right? But and if you just tap into what you love to do as a child, when you were free and you could do anything that you want. For me, that's what happened. Like I remembered as an adult in my 40s, I was like, you know what? I remember when I was 8 years old, I used to write all the time. I used
Yeah,
to get awards for my writing.
yeah.
And I used to speak so much and I used to get awards for my speaking. And it made me feel so free and relevant. And you have to remember those feelings. And so yeah, I mean, the gifts are inside of you. And unfortunately, we it's like we bury them because we're trying to make the money. We have all these responsibilities and we're told that, we've got to work, we've got to, whatever that job or that occupation is, we don't want to let it go to resurrect the gifts that were inside of us that we remember. And so it is a process. We need the jobs alone don't define who you are, but they can certainly help you recall who it was you were created to be. And that's what my track did for me.
And we hear lots of stories of people who are that age, like 8 years old. I wanted to be a writer, and I didn't really follow up on it. So you're inspiring me here. Thank you for that. But it's when they're like 8 year olds, there's like, I want to be a skier, and then they would ask me like, well, like with champion of say, your nation, like in the country, like no, the world, and it became true. And we have it with scientists too. It's like I want to go to the moon. It's like yeah, you're crazy, it won't happen, and they do, right? So it's really like that voice or that thing, that intuition, I think we have more access to it when we are younger, and then it gets clouded with all these like realistic thinking and pragmatic thinking, which is important and necessary, right? But at the same time, not to lose touch with that intuition, that voice, that vocation that you're supposed to do, that will give you pleasure, that they call dharma in other traditions, of doing your spiritual duty as well, adding here another element to it. I think that's hugely important and often overlooked.
Yes, it is. And what people have to understand at some point, this is what I understood, is that the longer I delay, the
Yeah.
longer I hesitate, the harder it is to manifest, because you need time. It's a
Mhm.
process.
Oh yeah.
You
Oh
have to
yeah.
trust the process. I mean, like, the oak tree starts as a seed, but when you plant the seed, you don't get the oak tree the next day, right? It takes years to develop that. Now, the oak tree is a I would say an extreme example, and even a great example, depending on how big your dreams are.
Mhm.
You know, some people may have more attainable dreams in terms of time. And here's the thing that people need to understand: obey. You have to obey what's inside of you. You know, it's like your gifts are like they are rattling a cage inside of you and wanting you to let them out, let them
Yeah.
free. And the longer you delay that, it just it just becomes a little bit harder to unlock the cage. So just I just encourage the listeners out there to keep that in mind. I think the opposite of obedience, or the enemy to obedience, it's really not disobedience, it's hesitation.
I
I
like
think
that.
hesitation is something that can kill dreams.
Mhm. I love that. And it's like, but when you're talking earlier, I thought of the comfort zone because it's like you do a job and it's pleasant and you don't complain about it. Others like you too and your effort and your performance, but it might not be enough. And so not being afraid of reinventing yourself or trying out something new and see if that will give you even more pleasure instead of just doing the same thing and staying in that comfort zone. So it takes courage to step outside.
Absolutely. It does. And, one of the chapters in my book actually speaks to gaining experience and exposure and being willing to go outside that comfort zone, be open to new opportunities. And that's just so important to try something scary so that you can discover more about yourself.
There's a lot of negativity too. There's a lot of opposition, and that is from even from families that mean well, but it doesn't help. The teachers you mentioned earlier that kind of cut down the dreams that one has, and also in terms of society, there's again various obstacles there in many shapes and forms, which are again which need to be overcome. And so it's really like just trying to go against the grain in many ways and not being afraid of stepping out and not listening to those limiting voices.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one way to cut out some of those voices is to don't compare yourself.
Right.
Watch, be careful of what you subscribe to on social media, who you follow. And I mean, because and I'm saying this even to myself, there have been many times where I feel like I've discouraged myself because I'm swimming through social media and I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to be at this level, or I need to be over there, and I have to stop. Uh I have to tell myself, you cannot compare yourself. You just have to trust the process. And you're absolutely right. The voices, I think when I first made my pivot out of corporate America into doing what I'm doing now, um, my dad, I just go back to my dad. I'll never forget one of the things he asked. And I know he was trying to be supportive, but he's from a different generation that, you stay somewhere for 30 years and you get your watch. But that was his generation. He was
Yeah.
a baby boomer. But I just remember him asking, well, what you going to do about those benefits? And little did he know, I mean, like I planned, and this is a lesson too for those that are thinking about, you know, who want to manifest their own dreams, whether they make a complete pivot out of their 9 to 5 or not. you've got to plan for it. Like, it just won't happen. You have to take the time and be thorough and think about your finances and think about your team, and think about what type of structure you need to create for yourself so that you create the blueprint for you to thrive and to actually build and manifest that dream that you have.
And I love again the title again, own your opportunities. So the opportunities are there that you need to take control of. And then you might have more opportunities or less. Again, and there are various factors involved there. But what you have, it's really taking responsibility, taking control, and trying to make the best out of it, and then not limiting yourself by that. Because from that opportunity, another opportunity will appear. And so just keep going.
Just, I mean, that's it. I mean, that's exactly right. One opportunity begets another opportunity. I see that all the time. And that's how you grow. And that's why you can't start this path and give up. You have to be consistent. Baby steps
Yeah.
still count as steps.
Mhm.
And so in order for you got to crawl before you walk, you got to walk before you run. But it takes consistency to build up those muscles of endurance inside of you. And yes, you're going to make some falls and, along the way, but those falls make you stronger. And what do? You get back up and you keep on walking, and then you walk a little bit further or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's a process, and people have to understand that when it comes to dream manifestation.
Yeah. There's always a path forward. I think that's really important, that you will continue. And the failures, really, I mean, we talk about it. We don't like failing. Nobody likes it. It feels horrible. But I find like those are really those learning opportunities. That's where you learn the most. And when people oppose you, I'm grateful for people who are my enemies, because they taught me a lot, much more than my friends. And they didn't maybe care about me, but that doesn't matter. They still help me. So it's turning something negative into positive, that we have the opportunity to do so. And I think that's hugely important. And I'm grateful for that too. It's not like, okay, because they hate me, I won't go forward, I will stop you. No, do the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You need those hard lessons.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, every vision has to be tested.
Mhm.
You have to be tested before you can be trusted.
Mhm.
So your vision is tested through the adversity, through the low finances, through the rejection, through people. When I wrote my book, Own Your Opportunities, and for me and the goals that I have for my book, I knew that traditional publishing was the route for me. I knew that self-publishing wasn't going to help me achieve the goals that I wanted for my book. And so my only path was traditional publishing. And do you know, that process is extremely hard. I
I
mean,
know.
just find an agent. I sent query letters to over 100 agents, including agents in Canada.
Yes.
And I got rejected. I got rejected over 100 times just to get to my one yes. And it took me a period of 2 years. Can you imagine that, if I had decided to give up, if I had decided to cave in or fold because somebody told me no,
Yeah.
because somebody told me that my project wasn't a fit for their list,
Yeah.
I could have easily given up, but I didn't. And now I
Yeah.
have a book.
One of the things too, when people say like, if you don't believe in yourself, how do you expect others to believe in you? So that vision, you really have to dedicate yourself to it. And many writers have gone through that. I mean, this is just like they're famous now, but if you ask them, it was a struggle, right, for them. And I want to think I give a specific example here, a real life example of the Beatles. When they were in Hamburg, there was a point where nothing was working out, and they had to decide: do we fold? Do we give up? Or do we continue? And then John Lennon says, we're going to continue to get to the top. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. But what if they had given up that night? The
Mhm.
world would be much poorer because of that, because they did not mind their unique talents And now we have their music and their legacy.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so your vision has to be tested, right? Your dreams have to be tested. And it's up to you to decide if you're going to survive that test. And you can survive it just by not giving up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. I think so. What would you say about leadership, though? What is something that you would define as a good leader? What makes good leadership in your point of view?
Yeah, I think that so I think that good leadership, well, leadership is about influence, according to John Maxwell anyway, right? Like I didn't coin that. And I think that did come from him. I just want to give credit where credit is due. But I believe, and I said this earlier, and this is Juliet Hall. I do agree with Maxwell on influence. But I think that there's a more fundamental uh, um, uh, essence to leadership, and that is the self-discovery. I
Yeah.
think you have to I think you lead from your strengths. I think that but you have to identify that, right? The gifts, the natural gifts that are inside of you. And because you have to not only discover what your unique God-given inherent gifts are, um, you have to develop it. You
Mhm.
have to share that with the world. And I think the best leaders serve through their gifts. I also think that leadership, like the best leaders, they identify like what makes them angry, right? And I think that the things that we say passion, I think that's another word that people use. That's a very popular term, but if you want to flip it,
Yeah.
if you want to give it a little bit more definition, think about what really stirs you up, what
Mhm.
makes you angry, because that will also lead you to, I think, a purpose for your life. And so leaders understand their purpose, leaders understand the gifts that are inside of them that they deploy to help those around them better. So that's, to me, that's why I say this self-discovery is the genesis of true leadership.
There's a certain honesty there that is necessary too, being honest with yourself and identifying also not only your strengths but your weaknesses, and
Mhm.
also opening up to vulnerabilities. I think when I see that in a leader, when they are saying like, you know what, that was wrong, I made a mistake, because it makes them human and we can relate to them more, as opposed to like, I have all the answers and I'm this perfect being. I already like shut up because I don't think that's possible. And you lose that trust. But once you do that and you become like a whole human being, of course, you need to have more strengths and weaknesses. Otherwise, then that's going to be tough. But once you acknowledge those two and you're open to it, I think people will trust you more too. That's like an issue there that is often missing with many leaders that we see out in the world.
Mhm. I agree absolutely. Just how important trust is. And the
Mhm.
reason for that is because, like, when I do teach on leadership, like I start with the word.
Mhm.
The root word of leadership is lead.
Mhm.
And lead is an action verb. It's not a passive verb, it's an action verb. So lead is about moving people from point A to point B. It's that movement, it's that progression. That's what leaders do. And so, we call it influence, and but it's a movement, it's a progression. But in order to get people to move for you, they have to trust you. So
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's all of that. Yeah, leadership, part of being a great leader is having a heart condition of humility and of character. And there's a difference between character and reputation, because character is who you are. Reputation is what other people say about you, but you know who you are behind closed doors. And if you're handling those books right, and if you have intentions of doing what you said you were going to do, I mean,
Mhm.
all of those things
Yeah.
matter in leadership. It's when you have the right heart condition, you make it easy for people to trust you.
Yeah. And also care and empathy though. That and it doesn't mean that you do what they say. You can be firm, but you can do it in a gentle way. And I think that's really important because they say this person is steadfast, but they are open to listening to others and considering other points of views as well. That kind of balance there without giving in to them, because that's then we become conformist, and we don't want that. That's not a good leader either.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And knowing the individual. I mean, some people, um, you have to communicate to the benefit of the receiver. So there are some people who just say, just give it to me hard, or don't hold
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And then there are other people who require maybe a softer touch in terms of you know sharing the hard lessons or giving feedback. And I think that leads to another point, is that great leaders really understand their people, and they take the time to get to know their people and their stories, and through building that type of relationship with them. Leaders are intentional about communicating in a way where they receive the information.
I love the term shakers and movers, because you need to shake up things and then you can move and others will follow you. And so I think that's hugely important. I want to talk about a paradox though, as we're talking about like putting in your effort, trying your best and so on. There's a point where, again, personal experience, where I find I try too hard. And when I try too hard, things don't manifest themselves. There's like a certain resistance. And I found it's not giving up. It's just like taking some time off or relaxing a bit, and suddenly all these opportunities arrive. So last year I tried too hard and things didn't work out. This year, everything is falling into my lap. And it's just my way of approaching things was in a more relaxed way. And I guess that resonates with others as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well, congratulations on that, that it's, that you're seeing the manifestation of all the seeds that you've sown. I mean, and I think that, can you ever try too hard? I don't know. I don't know if you like, I think that as you were saying that, in my mind I was thinking, this is really about sowing seeds. It's planting the right seeds and nurturing those seeds, cultivating those seeds. And you know and this goes back to trusting the process, because growth actually happens in isolation. It happens in, like, as people. It's like I tell people, your growth happens inwardly before it appears outwardly.
Yeah, fully agree with that.
And so
Yeah.
I just think that, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say it's working too hard. I think you understand what you have to do, and it reflects your commitment.
Mhm.
It reflects your diligence. It reflects your belief and
Yeah.
your vision, and in your dream. And I think it's an encouragement I mean, for you to say, like, I work so hard, and there's a certain point where, because I think I understand what those feelings are. I understand that when you sow the seeds, there's still a period of waiting. And
Yes.
it's the waiting that's hard. It's
Mhm.
the waiting of not seeing the fruit of your efforts.
Yes.
But you have to believe in the process, in the germination, in the growth. And eventually that growth breaks through the hard ground.
Yeah.
And then you see it, you see the blade, and then, and it just grows exponentially from there. I think trusting the process is so hard for people, because we want to see things happen overnight, or we want to see
Yeah.
them happen a lot faster. I know I do. you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the meantime, you got bills to pay and all of that. But but you're seeing the fruit, and I hope that the listeners out there hear this,
Mhm.
that you have to go through the process of sowing the seeds and being consistent and nurturing and cultivating and all of that. um you can't stop. The growth won't stop. The
Yeah, I
more
love
that
the
you.
term of waiting that you're saying. That is hugely important. In Chinese, they have wu wei, which is like acting while you're not acting. And that, again, takes effort sometimes of not trying to do too much, taking your time, taking like time off, and then get back at it. So, I mean, for me, hugely important. Effort is hugely important, and I encourage everyone to work hard. But it's also taking that time off, letting things grow, letting the soil, like you might not be the right soil. So you have to find your seeds are good, but the soil isn't fertile. Try another one. And then so giving that opportunity, but taking the time to really find out what is it you want to do instead of just keep doing and doing. So that aimless, like working hard, but in different directions. I was like, a blueprint, you mentioned that earlier. I think that's really important. What is my plan? And then think about the time you need, the waiting period. Take some time off, perhaps in between, of making sure you have the energy to continue. Sometimes it's just not the right time. And I found that last year. It's just like, yes, it wasn't the right time. Now is the right time. And we get that again, the intuition tells us, like, okay, go, like the green light, you know? And sometimes it's not. And I think we have to be aware of that too, because otherwise we blame ourselves. Like say, I failed because I did not try too hard. And yes and no, right? It's a complex issue.
Yes, yes, yeah. But I mean, it's you just have to keep going. I mean, that's just
Yes.
that's the lesson.
That's wonderful. Thanks so much, Juliet Hall. So just want to remind everyone, your book is Own Your Opportunities, a story of self-discovery and self-determination. You've shown here self-discovery as well as self-determination, explained it really well. Thank you so much for being on Arash's World.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And please follow me on social media, on Instagram and on YouTube at Juliet Hall.
I will do, and the audience will as well. Thank you so much.